Hello everyone and welcome to our Digital Surf presentation. My name is Ekola and you will be hearing from myself, Ayla Carpenter, Otis Smith, and Greff today about our Surf project, which is using Six Sigma to improve accounts receivable at Shodair Children's Hospital. First, let's discuss what the methodology behind the Six Sigma DMAIC process is. Six Sigma DMAIC provides a roadmap for problem solving and product or process improvement. We start with the whole process, which in our case was Shodair's AR, and is represented by the equation above the funnel highlighted in purple. The Y represents Shodair AR, and all of the X's represent all of the inputs that go into Shodair's AR. Throughout the DMAIC process, or define, measure, analyze, improve, and control steps, we were able to narrow down all of those X variables to a select few that have proven to be having the largest impact on AR. We narrow down the X variables through using several tools which are outlined in the funnel. Each of these tools has a specific purpose and helped us reach our ultimate goal of discovering why Shodair's AR is suffering.
The project charter is the first step in the DMAIC approach. The charter helps to begin the process of the project. You define the process definition, strategic goals of the company, problem statement, project objective, benefits impact, milestones for the project, benefits to the company, and resources and support members involved in the project. The charter outlines the process that will take place within the project and goals to work towards along the way. The main goal for Shodair accounts receivable is to find a solution to outpatient DSO. The goal is to reduce AR days, which leads us into the process map. The process map helps define the process boundaries, input variables, output variables, process steps, performance metrics, and a set of input variables for the C&E matrix or the FMEA. The results of the process map give us the inputs for measure, analyze, improve, and control. Help us have a better understanding of the process that we are trying to improve in the project and provide us with possible improvement ideas. We use the X inputs to determine the type of process that we are working with, either uncontrolled or controlled, and then we have our output Y variables. We now move to the measure phase.
The measure section from the DMAIC approach looks at capability studies. We want to analyze to see if the process is sustainable. The goal of this project was looking at the processes of Shodair and their accounts receivable department. Their accounts receivable days were 47 at the beginning of this project in January. Our goal is to get this number down to 40 days. To measure the capability of this process, we ran a process capability six-pack report. The mean came out to be 56.5 accounts receivable days over the previous 7 months. To achieve the goal of 40 days, we need to look into improving processes within Shodair. Next, we'll go into the measure phase.
The KJ analysis is a tool that we use to discover X values throughout the Shodair accounts receivable process. The analysis begins with each individual group member thinking about a very specific issue that could relate to the accounts receivable process that could lead to late or no payment. These are black level inputs, seen in the gray text boxes on the slide. These black level inputs are then grouped into red level categories. These categories are seen in the red text box. Finally, the red level categories are then grouped into a final blue level category. Throughout this step, we were able to come up with 30 X variables and put them into 3 overarching categories, which are seen in blue. The C&E matrix is a cause and effect matrix that we use to see the relationships between our selected Y variables seen on the top row and the X variables taken from the process map in the KJ analysis. We view or rate these relationships using an importance chart seen in the very top of the picture in the slide. The Y variables are given an importance rating between 1 and 10. As we move through the first X variable seen on the slide, we place a correlation rating of either 0, 1, 3, or 9 in the boxes that represent how strongly the X correlates to the given Y, 0 being no correlation and 9 being an absolute correlation. At the end of each line, each correlation rating is multiplied by the importance rating, all adding up to give the X variable a score. The higher the score, the more important the X variable is. Once every line is complete, we create a Pareto chart that displays each score from highest to lowest. At this point, we can determine which X variables we want to choose to move on with the Six Sigma process. We were able to narrow down our X variables from 55 to 23.
For the analyze phase, we use the FMEA matrix, which stands for Failure Modes and Effects Analysis. The FMEA focuses on potential failure modes associated with the functions of a system caused by the design, focuses on product function, and focuses on process inputs. The inputs of our FMEA included data from our process map, KJ analysis, C&E matrix, and selection of key processes that could potentially fail. The outputs are a prioritized list of potential root causes of poor performance. We came up with 8 outputs for Shodair. Those outputs were services not covered, covered at out-of-network rates, wrong guarantor, don't close encounter without charge, don't get charge in within timely window, not getting charge in at all, and provider enrollment issues. This data then led us to the next step of the analyze phase, which is multivariate studies.
The analyze section looks into multivariable studies. Multivariate studies is a method of studying the relationship between input variables and the output variables of a process while in normal operation. We looked into to see if there was a relationship between different insurances and corresponding aging days. An ANOVA test was performed on the Minitab application. ANOVA tests 3 or more levels of discrete X variables and continuous Y variables. The null hypothesis from this test was that all the means of aging days are equal. The alternative hypothesis was that not all the means are equal. Through this test, we discovered the p-value is 0. This means that we reject the null hypothesis and can confidently say there is no difference in aging days with different providers. Blue Cross Blue Shield had an average of 149 days, which was high given they had 114 individuals in the outpatient program. Next, we will move into the improve phase. For the improve section, our team looked into the design of experiments and attempt to improve the processes at Shodair. Design of experiments determine effects inputs of a process have on the final product. These tests identify critical inputs of the process and brings out understandings to modify the variables on the process performance. From our results from the FMEA, we outlined 3 experiments that could be performed. We want to look at performing tests on services at Shodair being covered versus services not being covered. Encounters being closed with a charge versus encounters being closed without a charge. And finally, no charge versus charge going in late. Results from these DOEs will allow further understanding of the variables' relationship with the process performance. Next, we will discuss the control phase.
The final step in the DMAIC process is control. In this step, we hope to sustain our gains. Our final control plans will determine the operating procedures and processes to control the vital X variables that drive the Y outcome in order to sustain the gains. Since this project is complete on our end, we will be handing the baton over to Shodair AR and financial teams so they can monitor the progress of the changes that we have suggested. These personnel will need to 1. Increase training and education for front desk employees, providers, meaning therapists, dietitians, doctors, speech pathologists, etc., 2. Billing personnel, and 3. Finance personnel. They will also need to review AR days and dollars frequently to see if there are any changes that are happening, as well as measuring the success of the new improved measure and comparing it to the overall goal of the Six Sigma process, which was to reduce AR days. It is also important to note that all of this needs to be done within the scope of the mission of Shodair, which is to help as many children as possible. Let me summarize what this all means. Through the Six Sigma DMAIC process, we found that there are 9 steps in Shodair's outpatient charging and billing process. Currently, accounts receivable is performing well outside the preferred limits, running at roughly 56.5 days over the last 7 months, instead of somewhere between 40 to 47. After narrowing down some of the X variables, we found that there are 3 categories of X variables, and they are parent-guardian issues, coding and tech issues, and insurance issues. After further evaluation, we were then able to narrow down the accounts receivable problem to 8 key X variables, which are included in the equation at the bottom of the slide. And finally, our ANOVA test determined that there is no correlation between accounts receivable days and the patient's insurance provider. Through this process, we were able to narrow down and determine the main X variables that are causing Shodair's AR to suffer, and we have recommended changes to Shodair that we hope they will take to action and continue to monitor.
Lastly, we would like to thank the team at Shodair, in particular the CFO Maria Valdenegro, for her patience and support and allowing us behind the scenes at the Children's Hospital.